Once, in a grand and powerful kingdom, there lived a mighty king. His palace was made of marble, his crown was made of gold. His army was the strongest in the land. He had everything a man could desire, but he did not have peace. Every night, he walked alone on his palace balcony, looking over the city lights, wondering why his heart still felt empty. Far away from the palace, in the poorest corner of the kingdom, stood a small, broken house made of mud and wood. Inside that house lived a young boy and his mother. The boy's father had died years ago while working as a laborer. Since then, his mother carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. She washed clothes for others. She cleaned houses. She stitched torn garments late into the night. Her hands were rough. Her back was bent, but she never complained. The boy watched everything. He was only 12 years old, but his eyes were not like other children's eyes. They carried responsibility. Every morning before school, he woke up before sunrise. He fetched water from the well. He collected firewood. He made sure his mother ate before he did. At school, he sat quietly, listening carefully to every lesson. He knew education was the only way to change their life. At night, under a weak oil lamp, he studied while his mother coughed softly behind him. Sometimes there was not enough food. Sometimes there was no food at all. But whenever his mother gave him the last piece of bread, he would smile and say, "I already ate outside." It was Elie. One day, the king decided to walk through his kingdom in disguise. He wore simple clothes and left the palace without guards. He wanted to see the truth. As he passed through the rich streets, people smiled and bowed. But when he reached the poor side of town, the smiles disappeared. There, he saw hunger. He saw struggle. And then he saw the boy. The boy was helping his mother carry a heavy bucket of water. His small hands were shaking, but he did not stop. The king followed them quietly. That evening, dark clouds covered the sky. A storm began. Rain poured heavily over the small house. Water started leaking through the broken roof. The mother began coughing badly. She had been sick for weeks, but there was no money for medicine. The boy quickly placed a pot under the leaking roof. Then he took the only blanket they had and covered his mother. He sat beside her the entire night, holding her hand. "I'm here, mother," he whispered. "Nothing will happen to you." The king stood outside in the rain, watching through the broken window. Something inside him moved. The next morning, the king returned. This time not in disguise. Soldiers surrounded the small house. The boy stepped outside bravely. He stood in front of his mother and said loudly, "If you've come to take our house because we owe taxes, take it. But, please, don't hurt my mother." The king felt a deep pain in his chest. He stepped forward and asked, "Why are you not afraid?" The boy replied, "My father died protecting this family. Now I am the man of this house. If I am afraid, who will protect her?" Silence filled the air. The king removed his crown and looked at the boy. A sighed slowly. "I sit on a throne made of gold, but today I stand before someone greater than me." The boy looked confused. The king continued, "You have no wealth, yet you give. You have no power, yet you protect. You have no crown, yet you act like a king." Tears formed in the king's eyes. That day, he ordered his royal doctors to treat the mother. He rebuilt their house with strong walls and a solid roof. But that was not all. He offered the boy a place in the Royal Academy. The boy hesitated. "Can I still take care of my mother?" Ask it." The king smiled. "She will be cared for, and one day you will care for this entire kingdom." Years passed. The boy studied harder than anyone else. He remembered hunger. He remembered rain leaking through the roof. He remembered his mother's cough. He grew wise, not because of books alone, but because he understood pain. When he became a young man, the king made him his closest advisor, and slowly, the kingdom began to change. Taxes were reduced for the poor. Food was distributed during hard winters. Work was given to those who needed it. The people began to respect the king again. One evening, the king stood once more on his balcony. But this time he was not alone. The young advisor stood beside him. The king said softly, "For years, I searched for peace and gold and power, but I found it in a small broken house." The young man replied, "Your Majesty, a crown does not make a man great, responsibility does." And in that moment, the king finally felt peace, because he learned the greatest lesson of his life. True royalty is not about wealth. It is about courage. It is about sacrifice. It is about protecting the ones you love. And sometimes, the strongest king in a kingdom is just a poor boy who refused to give up.